Hello and welcome to Blockchain Gaming World with me, John Jordan. So we're doing our regular roundup of the most popular blockchain games. That is looking at the daily on-chain data as taken from DApp Radar. So we're looking now the extra month, so the new month is November, but looking at further back into 2024 to see some trends. So as has been the case for most of 2024. The Blue Dot Pixels. Pixels is the most popular blockchain game, at least in terms of DApp Radar's data for what I consider a game. There are other sort of what we might call GameFi projects that sort of have higher daily active usage, but they're not really sort of games as I understand them. They're much more sort of crypto incentivized sort of projects. So we're looking sort of formally at things that we can say are games. So for Pixels, as really we've seen, so sort of for the second half of 2024, in terms of sort of pure numbers, it's in decline. So we can see it got as low as 250,000 daily active unique wallets at the start of November. It sort of bounced back up to closer to sort of 450,000. Obviously, with everything on blockchain, we have to be a little bit careful about the number of bots and the number of what we might call extractive players. So if there's sort of a play to earn sort of certainly an event going on, then people are going to pile in, and if there's sort of in general ability to sort of take tokens and sell them off, then you can drive quite high sort of audiences. But over time, developers don't really want to sort of give their value to people who are just going to sell it. So that's what's been happening with Pixels. That's sort of one of the main reasons, not the only reason, but one of the main reasons why we've seen this decline, because they've been trying to sort of target their token giveaways really to people who are spending money in the game. So at the moment they're saying about 50% of their audience is actually spending Pixel token in the game to do things in the game, and they're sort of getting Pixel as a reward. We'll see how that sort of plays out, but they're definitely not. I think at certain phases game developers want to highlight audience, and obviously when Pixels got to 1 million earlier in the year, they sort of highlighted that, but those were those sort of user bases are not sort of sustainable. So what you're looking for is how sustainable is the user base in the sort of medium term. So with Pixels, I guess we're saying about sort of 300, 400,000 seems to be where it's ending up at the moment. We'll see where it goes. It's just starting a guild event that's going to run into March, giving away $4 million worth of Pixel tokens. So we'll see what impact that has. And I've sort of paired Pixels in this graph with Lumitera, which is another game on the Ronin blockchain. And in this case, the game is not live yet. So what we're seeing here is very high audience or on-chain sort of activity driven by its closed beta tests. So we have the first closed beta test. It actually hits about 750,000 in July. So at the same level as Pixels there, but we see clearly it falls off a lot. And then there's sort of nothing going on here when the game's sort of not doing an event, and then it's just starting an event again. So we're starting to see again a pickup, not as high as it was before. This was very much driven by people just sort of clicking on a website to maybe get some tokens. Tokens not live yet, as far as I know. But what we'll be looking to see in 2025 is when Lumitera is live, what's its sustained sort of level. So obviously it's going to be volatile, it's going to go up and down, but sort of where is it going to be more than Pixels? In some ways, it's an MMORPG, maybe a bit more traditional. Pixels is a sort of more social based sort of pixel game. I mean, Lumitera is not like not quite a 3D sort of Fortnite, but it's I guess a bit more of a sort of traditional MMORPG, I suppose. So we'll see how that one plays out. What else have we got? So breaking it down a bit closer, so this is just looking at really October, November. There are sort of 4 games that are doing well. So obviously we looked at Pixels, we looked at Lumitera, and we have now Age of Dino in green. So that's just sort of, it's actually been live on the app stores for ages, over 6 months. But now they've started doing more blockchain stuff. So again, this is a sort of the first sort of token incentivized event they've been having. So their own token's called Raw. The sort of token of the blockchain they're running on is called the blockchain is called Exterio. I don't think the token's live yet, but basically they're sort of doing a play to airdrop sort of event here, and they've got over 250,000, so doing pretty well on that. It's a sort of 4x, it is a 4x mobile game with sort of mechanical dinosaur sort of base, a bit Jurassic Park like. So again, we'll see how that sustains. And then we have Off the Grid. So Off the Grid is the first console game with blockchain added. It's a first or third person shooter sort of extraction mode at the moment is what's out there. There's other modes coming. It's on PC, Xbox, and PlayStation. There's still a bit of sort of uncertainty around how many players it's got. So I've just taken DatRadar's data because it's sort of easier. There is other data out there which is higher. So there's some other. It sort of depends always with on-chain data what exactly you're measuring. Are you measuring just sort of any sort of login transaction, or are you looking to have something a bit deeper? How are you filtering sort of bots or trying to filter bots? So anyway, I think this will be a lower. Sort of a lowest estimate of its audience. It may be higher than this, but in the interest of sort of consistency, I've gone with DatRadar, and they're still doing pretty well. Like you say, sort of 200,000 sort of daily actives. The other data has about over 400,000 sort of. But it's pretty. I guess what's interesting here, no matter what data you're using, it's pretty steady. In this case of DatRadar, it's actually been increasing from the launch time. So it's never gone very high. On the other data, I think it was peaking at over 800,000 on the launch weekend. So again, we're not quite sure what's being picked up here in terms of blockchain activity. But again, we've seen 2025 as more modes come out for Off the Grid. I think at the moment you would say, I can't really play it. You have to have a certain level of sort of skill to play that game at the moment. That will change, I guess, when the single player mode goes live and other modes go live. So we'll sort of keep an eye on that. But there are games that are seeing sort of strong growth, either because they've just gone live on console, or in the case of Age of Dino, because they're sort of giving away stuff. Okay, what else? So I'm looking at some OG games here. So this is going all the way back for 2022. So these are games that have been around for a couple of years. In fact, these games were actually live in 2021 and even earlier in some of these cases. So we have Axie Infinity in red. So this starts off sort of quite high because that was the sort of peak time, late 2021, early 2022, and it comes right down. And at the start of 2024, it's about 15,000 it's doing, and now it's up over 100,000. So that's quite strong growth now, but obviously much lower than it was in 2022. Again, this has been incentivized because Sky Mavis is giving away a whole bunch of tokens for people who sort of either log in to the game or you get more the more sort of you play the game. So again, sort of heavily incentivized. But it's driven, sort of tenfold growth from a very low level. We have Nine Chronicles, so this is a sort of PC and mobile-based idle RPG. It launched its mobile version a year ago, so that's what a lot of this growth has come from. Again, it's around about 100,000, and it's not incentivized in the way like Axie Infinity is, although you can get some tokens. Obviously, you do sort of win things for playing the game, and if you just log in and play a little bit, you can win. You can claim a very small amount of the in-game currency. And so degree incentivized, I guess sort of we'll see again how far it can drive its audience. They are doing some sort of quite big changes to what they're doing, whether that will make the game have a bigger audience or just sort of more sort of a more sticky, more monetized audience for what it's got. And then we have Alien Worlds in blue, which again for a long time was over 200,000 daily active unique wallets. Back when it launched in 2021, I think it had about 400,000. Came right down to about sort of 60, 70,000, and is sort of now about 80, sort of 90,000. So again, these are games which sort of have, in the case of Axie Infinity and Alien Worlds, have been much higher in the past, and they've sort of gone through this sort of process. Maybe we were talking a little bit around with Pixels, where you can drive very high audience numbers with sort of to degree sort of hype and giving away value or the ability to make money. I suppose in the case of Axie Infinity, people were sort of farming the NFTs, but that sort of stuff isn't sustainable. So it's sort of where you end up in the long term that is sort of important, and clearly how much sort of value you can drive, and sort of what the value of your underlying tokens is. In all these sort of cases, actually, the tokens, actually the AXS token, the 9 Chronicles Gold token, and the Trillium from Alien Worlds, those tokens are much lower than they certainly from their all-time highs, probably 90% down from their all-time highs. Recovered a little bit from their all-time lows, but they even though they've been around for a while, their tokens have been under pressure during this period of time. Okay, what's next? So now look at two particular blockchains that are focused on gaming. So we've looked at some stuff on Ronin, on Pixels and Lumiterra. And now here's three other games. Again, smaller games. Actually, we've got Axie in here as well. So we looked at Axie. We can see here over the last half of the year, it's doubled its audience. Very steady, apart from some odd blips. The Machines Arena is a top-down, esports focused shooter. Again, it's going through a token incentivized play drop event. So this is why we've seen it from nothing up to over 100,000. It's pretty strong. It's I guess a more traditional game. Token's not live yet, so people are excited about get some of this token. Similar thing with Wild Forest. Wild Forest has been out for longer. Again, now it's peaking over 200,000. Its token is literally going live at the moment, so this is why a lot of this is be driven by that. But NFT collections have been live on Ronin for months. Actually, they are one of the more popular and more highly traded NFT collections on Ronin. It's a mobile game, been available through app stores for about 8-9 months. I think it's a pretty solid game. Whether it will be super exciting, whether again when the token goes live and these things calm down a little bit, we'll see where it ends up. But it has been over 100,000 for many months, so that's I guess a good sign for the future. And also have a look on Immutable. So Immutable always says it's got tons of games coming out, but there's actually not much live on Immutable at the moment, and certainly not much live which is seeing decent audiences. So the three I'm looking at here are Immortal Rising, which is just launched. It is again another idle RPG through the app stores. It's been out for a while but not had blockchain elements in it, so now they added this blockchain incentivization. So actually what we're looking here is people playing the game and then logging into the Immutable Rising 2 website and claiming, basically doing a a transaction, actually claiming soulbound NFTs, really. But that's that's been seen a pretty positive rise over the last, which is not even 2 weeks really, in terms of this data. So I think they say they've had about 600,000 downloads. So if they're getting 100,000 daily active unique wallets, that's not a bad ratio, I don't think. The blockchain is not very obvious in the game. Maybe that will become more obvious when the token goes live, I guess. Boomland is a collection of games. The main game is Hunters on Chain, that is going through its second season of a token airdrop campaigns, but it's dropped out. It was much higher. Its first season went pretty well. Second season is I won't go into details, but second season is going through Game 7 rather than Boomland. So it's been lower. There are other games in the Boomland ecosystem, so it's not just Hunters on Chain we're looking at here. But between 100,000 and 50,000 is where it is at the moment. Again, when the token for Hunters on Chain goes live, we'll get a better idea about what the sustained audience is. And Guild of Guardians. So Guild of Guardians launched in May, launched with about 15,000 daily active unique wallets at peak when it launched, and every day has been down since then. So it's been a very steady decline. I guess one of the things about all these mobile games is they are a bit different to games like maybe Pixels or games where you're logging in and doing a transaction to even start playing the game. With these games, with Guild of Guardians, it's only very specific in-game actions that would trigger an on-chain transaction. So that would be things like leveling up, or not really leveling up, actually upgrading the what they call the radiancy of your guardians. So that's a very specific leveling up. Obviously trading NFTs and that sort of stuff as well. But you could very easily play the game without triggering an on-chain activity. So even though it's down to about 4,000 now, that doesn't mean there's 4,000 people playing the game. Clearly there's tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people playing the game. I think they've done 1 million downloads. Obviously a lot of those will be lost. So yeah, and a lot of them won't be using the blockchain. It's not a game. It's not a fully on-chain game. So not everyone who's playing that game is going to be using the blockchain. But we can see that, you know, even though that's the case, we can see there's been pretty steady decline. It's lost on its on-chain audience. It's lost 2/3 of its audience. Okay, so the final graph is a bit more sort of experimental. So what I've done here is I've looked to sort of combine a whole bunch of games together to try and get an idea of overall activity. This is sort of dangerous because you don't know about double, triple, quadruple counting. So if I and this is sort of how I do play. If I play of a day, if I play, you know, 9 Chronicles and Guild of Guardians and Lumeterra and try and think what else, Alien Worlds and Age of Dino. If I play those 5 games, in terms of this data, I will be counted as sort of 5 unique wallets. Because some of these are on different blockchains, some of them are, you know, even if I'm using the same wallet for the games on Immutable, this data, the way it works, you're not filtering it for multiple wallets, so you end up double counting. So you have to be a little bit careful with these sort of graphs, because if you just sort of, you know, if you're adding more games in, then certainly, you know, this graph is very blue. So here the only games on Ronin was Axie Infinity, whereas here we have Axie Infinity, Pixels, Lumeterra, Wild Forest, all these other games. So, and one wallet could be playing all those games and then appearing as sort of like 10 wallets. So we have to be a little bit careful in terms of how we look at this data. But I think it does show you know, some rough significance, in the sense that back in 2022 there weren't many blockchain games out there, certainly not many with a lot of audience. So there was basically Axie Infinity on Ronin, Splinterlands on Hive, and Alien Worlds on Wax, and a bit of other stuff going on other. And then we sort of had this big collapse here in the middle of 2022 when Splinterlands reworks its reward structure and loads of bots fall off, and then we sort of see a decline around to the end of 2023. You know, generally, you know, there's a decline going on in terms of playing. Then we have a sort of growth of Ronin. This is through Pixels to begin with. We can sort of see into 2024 sort of Alien Worlds. I mean, it's still there, but it's much smaller, and Splinterlands has sort of vanished. Other is getting bigger, but in the growth in 2024 is a lot of Ronin. So that's partly because Pixels has been really big, and there's been a lot of other games launching on Ronin. Again, have to be careful about the double, triple, quadruple counting of wallets playing those games. We've seen a few other blockchains coming along. So there's been some stuff on Base at certain periods of time. Immutable, obviously, we've seen some stuff. A lot of other. So you know, Off the Grid would count as other. Oh no, Off the Grid would be on Avalanche. Sorry. So it's Off the Grid sort of coming in here. But in general, I would say, you know, you could argue sort of where the peaks are, but we're definitely seeing sort of growth in 2024 in terms of the number of games. That will give us more wallets by definition, because we can't filter for them, but also there will be more wallets as well, because there's just more sort of tokens going live and more sort of sentiment around that. So yeah, that's what we've got. Obviously, next month will be the end of 2024, so we'll have some sort of roundup thoughts of what's happened during the year. So don't miss out, do subscribe, and I'll see you next time.